The end is near. Well, that's your truth, not mine. But isn't truth a matter of fact? The truth isn't controlled by a person, nor can a person mold the fundamental laws of the universe to their opinions. Whether you choose to believe it or not, your time will come. So how will you spend it? Will it be peaceful and filled with the golden rule? Or will you climb over your fellow man to ultimately be buried underneath their feet? In today's episode, we will see what human beings choose to do when presented with the truth, and don't look up.
Welcome to the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, where we analyze stories and films that help us make sense of life. We are four friends with backgrounds in storytelling, filmmaking, teaching, and narrative therapy. Join us on our quest towards telling and living our stories more meaningfully.
I'm Derek Hatch.
My name is Nick Natal.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joseph Wilson.
I'm Jason Lynn. All right, guys, we are continuing our politics series. We are well into election month. Woohoo,
And this takes place during an election, too.
Yeah, which is funny because we are going from the oldest film that we chose, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, to the most contemporary film out of all these.
Which, funny enough, they're both stories about trying to present the truth.
Yes, exactly. So why did you choose Don't Look Up, Joe?
Well, besides this movie being about an asteroid coming towards Earth, it's kind of like Armageddon. But with Armageddon, that's the world coming together to try to defeat this bigger threat. Which is like, that's such an aspirational movie. Like, we would want the world to come together to try to actually destroy something that could destroy us. But the reality is, most likely, if something was coming towards us, things in this movie would take place. Like, I'm thinking of the TikTok trends that they're doing. Yeah. They're shooting rockets in their face. Like, that's the Tide Pod challenge that they did, that kids used to do. Or just like, hey, that side is lying to you, so don't look up. I'm thinking of Trump with the bandage on his ear and how everybody put bandages on his ear after he was shot.
Wait, they did?
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff.
I was asleep for that one, luckily.
I'm telling you, there's a lot of things in this movie that I'm like, this could actually hikey happen, which makes it scarier.
Yeah.
The dude with the "we're all gonna die" sticker on his skateboard. That was kind of sick, actually. I was like, that is a real thing that would happen. I would love to have a sticker of that too.
They would have the guy on Sesame Street to explain to children what's going to happen to them.
I love that.
It's all those things. It's just like, and this world minimalizes those type of situations, even with things that go on in this world now. What does the news really talk about? Celebrities? What's the newest trend? What are things like that?
Right.
The media isn't meant, and even some political leaders with their campaigns are not meant really for the truth or to show people the truth. It's more to rally them to their side, to present an opposite force that they're trying to go up against so they can get power.
And they can forward an agenda. Yeah.
So you know, it's a system movie, so you know I'm about
These are all system movies, brother.
You know I'm about it.
This month
Joe,
is all about...
I don't think there's any other kind of movie.
Against well, that's even better.
It's a system in some regard.
Yeah.
Joe, what is the system?
What is the system to me? So I want to share, the system is not the government to me. The system is something that is in place that hinders people that it's supposed to protect. That's the system to me.
Okay.
So when something that is in control or in power is effectively harming the citizens it's supposed to protect, like what the system was meant to be for in general, that's what I don't like.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. Because again, because we are all Christians, we are all made in the image of Christ. So for you to harm God's children in such a way that is like but we're doing this in your benefit.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
So that's,
because the system is all about inequality. That's the only way it can function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say the system is to me.
That's good.
You know what John Carpenter says in our upcoming film, They Live?
What?
He says that good government is a solution. Bad government, that's when it's the problem. So even in that one, he's saying, like, it's not anti-government, it's anti-system.
It's anti-system, yeah.
It's anti-bad system.
Anti-bad system,
anti-bad
yes.
system.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into the letterboxd for Don't Look Up.
Letterboxd? Don't worry, I got it.
We'll hop into the conversation.
What?
Yeah, I already got it in my notes, don't worry. Based on truly possible events, two astronomers go on a media tour to warn humankind of a planet-killing comet hurtling towards Earth. The response from a distracted world? Meh.
All right, so Don't Look Up. It's a very interesting film because it's very recent. It was conceived during the Trump presidency, and I think that shows.
That shows a lot.
And also during the COVID pandemic, and I think that shows as well. But it came out in 2021, the tail end of 2021. Very divisive film when it came out. Like literally, I think the Rotten Tomatoes is like almost 50%, like 54 or something like that. So it's like split down the middle with critics. It did get nominated for some Academy Awards. I don't think it won any though, but it did get recognition for that. This was also when it came out. This was highest numbers for a Netflix original film that they had made up to this point.
I do remember seeing that too. Yeah,
so
which just made me watch it. I was like, okay, what's this movie?
And that was not like a licensed like franchise thing. Like that. This was an original like concept that got that distinction. So that also drew a lot of attention. And of course, the audience was very split on it as well.
Yeah.
It's speaking to different things on different sides. So Don't Look Up falls under that category of satire. So we've talked about a few satires on here. We talked about RoboCop, talked about American Psycho. So satires they have two goals in mind when you create a satire story. One is that a satire obviously is meant to entertain and amuse, like most stories, right?
Yeah.
It is meant to be fun. A lot of satires are fun movies to watch. You know, even something dark like American Psycho, like we were talking about all the moments we were laughing, right? So a lot of these satires, like South Park is like the epitome of like satire on TV.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is meant to be like fun, entertaining. But it also needs to both inform about an issue that's going on and seek some sort of path forward through reforming.
Yeah.
All right. So inform and reform.
To be honest, I feel like this movie is really speaking to loss of identity. In the sense of this side feel that people who worship and tie their identities to parties, celebrities, media, and technology, but none of these things can save you in the end. Even DiCaprio like loses himself to these things until he grounds himself in his principles again, which is his family principles, which again are biblical things. Even the last scene of this movie, what they do, they pray.
Yeah.
They're establishing themselves back to what is important and not tying themselves to these things that ultimately can't save them.
Yeah.
Because all those things abandon them. The money can't stop you from getting hit by an asteroid. The political parties betrayed you and lied to you so they can get richer and then try to sell this agenda like, hey, when this meteor hits, it's going to be nice for the whole world. Nope, you guys are dead and we're going to go on a spaceship and leave you guys here. So it's all these different things that people are trying to tie themselves to.
Yes.
But they lose themselves in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you've got these different characters and we kind of get to spend time seeing different points of view about this comet that's hurling towards Earth. One of the things this movie's famous for is the casting.
Yeah.
A lot of actors showing up. I think there's two actors for me that really stand out and one actor that is so bad he's in the wrong movie, in my opinion.
What the bad actor is Jonah Hill?
I think Jonah Hill is terrible in this movie.
He's acting. It doesn't feel like he's acting in a movie. He's acting in like a skit.
He makes it feel
like
his scenes feel like a Saturday Night Live skit or like one of those movies he used to do, like Superbad or something like that. Yeah,
it like breaks the immersion a little bit.
It does, because when he's in like Meryl Streep, Leonardo DiCaprio, like he's got big name act, and I just don't think he can.
And there was
I don't
only
think
one
he
time
can
that
chop it
Leonardo
up with them.
when he was in the newsroom.
So I actually do think, in my opinion, maybe this might be controversial with Nick, I do think DiCaprio probably gives what I think is the best performance in the movie, because I think that he actually restrains himself a lot. And I think like his character, like he's all into this character and it's very believable. He does yell one moment, but I think the yell, it was building to that.
Yeah.
And I think it felt earned when it got there. But I feel like DiCaprio, we got to see kind of like a different kind of performance where he's like a bit nervous and twitchy and
timid and more.
Yeah. So, because you like for a role like him, you want him to be likable, but you also like don't want to fully like excuse everything. Like he cheats on his wife and different things, but you do like him. You want to root for him. You know, that's very hard to do in this kind of story,
because it is a satire and it is meant to be a little like absurd.
Well, I think you can say that for the film as a whole.
Yeah.
But the direction and the screenplay, if it eased back just a little bit, I think it started out strong. I did enjoy the first maybe 45, maybe even the first hour, so 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
But I think towards the end, it started to get a little more aggressive and a little more repetitive. And then it just started to pound into the ground. And I think you can even see that represented in Jonah Hill's character. He just kind of starts to fall apart, and the jokes come like more lazy and more relaxed and not really, it just didn't land for me. They stopped landing.
Okay.
For me.
For me, like, it was getting more satirical as it came on. Like, it was getting more absurd and more
absurd. Yeah, that's a good word.
ridiculous. And I was kind of for it. And even with the ending, which we'll talk about later, I was like, no, that's fitting.
Yeah.
The dinner scene.
So the funny thing with the very end of so Tori watched this movie.
Oh.
And by the way, she says you picked some good movies. So
let's go.
well, because she watched Fury and she didn't expect to like it, and then she did. And then she watched the Planet of the Apes movies. We're into the movie. We're into the movie. We're watching the movie, and she's like, "Gosh, I just hope the meteor takes everyone out." I'm like, Tori, that's like really dark for you. You get time with all these characters. You see them tied to their identities, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, like, did you kind of have like, what was your perspective? What was your relationship with those characters? Was it, man, these characters, like, maybe we all just deserve this? Or was there like a piece of you that was like, as you were watching it, maybe they're going to come together and figure it out?
Well, the first time I watched it, I wanted them to like get something together so where they can actually defeat the thing that is going to destroy them all. I wanted to have faith in humanity.
Yeah.
But again, the second time watching it, I saw that like there is no faith. Like I can't have faith in this humanity because this humanity is ultimately so tied into their own selfishness and their own like gods in a sense.
Yes, their idols.
Where it's with their idols, where it's like, you gotta wipe the board clean. It's kind of like with God and the flood. There is no redeemable thing besides there is that one man with his family, but even that man really went towards the system and now at the end of his ropes realizing, okay, that was the thing I shouldn't have done. This is what is meaningful here.
So let me do a healthy push with this, okay? Healthy push, a little contention. So I want to see what you think of this, okay? So the director, Adam McKay, has said that this film is an allegory for climate change.
Context, thanks.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, context.
So
it's settled.
Yeah.
It's settled.
Well,
Jason, Jason, you didn't pick it. I know you didn't pick it, but it's still settled.
No, it's not.
It's context.
It'll have to warm up on me. I tried it out, and I'm like, I don't know, but we'll see.
I like it. I'll happily accept it. So he said this is an allegory for climate change. If that's true, if that's what he's going for, I think the movie fails.
Yeah.
Because the meteor is something that is a freak accident coming here. Climate change, it's purported, is human, like man caused, right? So I think the correlation falls apart if that's what he's trying to say, right? If you view the movie through that lens, it gets really messy.
You can kind of look at it that there's no agency of trying to change the climate change or the
right. And the solution to climate change obviously isn't just shoot down climate change, right? Yeah. So it's like, and then there's also the fact that like in real life, unholy trinity, I'll call it, of government, big business, big media. All these movies we're talking about, that unholy trinity is formed in some way. And this movie's no exception. The reality is that right now, that trinity of those things is for climate. They are the opposite of Don't Look Up. Yeah. They are the Just Look Up. Yeah. And that's one of my things with the movie I'm struggling with is like this movie is, if this is like, this is what the director is saying, right? Like this is what his movie is. Because what you're saying is a better movie than what he's saying his movie is, honestly. Because what he's saying his movie is this, and I said this falls apart if this is what you're saying it is. Yeah. Because then at that point, for one, the people who are sounding the whistle for climate change are the ones in power. Yeah. What this movie seems to do is to act like those people are the margins, the ones, and that was true 20, 30 years ago, right? Yeah. That was true at a time. But it's not anymore. Yeah. And the satire doesn't really address that because it still is playing into an older narrative of this is how it is now.
That's why I feel like it's more mean than smart.
Really?
I feel like it's more mean than smart. Like I spent 2 hours and 25 minutes following the story about how bad we are as a society and culture and people and world.
There is a view on the more like extreme left that, well, maybe humanity should just get wiped out. Like it's weird because Christianity on the like a hyper Christianity and hyper right view is like we are totally depraved. There is nothing good we can do, right? But on the opposite of that, there is also a view that's formed in recent decades, and it's because of climate change. I think that's the gospel for that side, right? Is that there is something coming, and we need to find our salvation. We need to find our way forward through that. But part of that narrative in some circles is humanity is so bad, we might as well just throw our hands up and let the comet take us out, right? And that's kind of like what I'm wondering, like, what is McKay trying to say here? Because there is almost like a meanness of the movie. You could watch the movie and justify that view. But then it's also interesting that the thing, when all hell breaks loose and the comet's coming and they can't do anything to stop it, the thing that they end up doing at the end is the most conservative, conventional thing I could ever imagine happening in this movie is a traditional family dinner, praying together, talking about gratitude.
That's why,
and that's why I'm like, maybe there's something he's saying there but maybe in this worldview, this is what it leads to. And it's interesting that the thing he chooses to anchor the main cast in at the end for them to find meaning is in the most traditional expression that you can imagine. And that's when DiCaprio says, we really had it all or had everything. I know that was a lot I threw at you, but I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
But I want to hear Nick too.
Well, when I compare it to American Psycho, so they're two satires.
Yeah.
This one feels hopeless. And American Psycho, after we went through it, does not necessarily feel hopeless. There is still something that we're pushing into Bateman, still trying to reach something that may be unreachable, but we're still pushing in. It's a feeling, I don't know, I just feel like there was more compassion and empathy in that movie. And the jokes, we were kind of laughing together.
Yeah.
This one, I feel like beat me up.
Yeah.
This one, I feel different. I feel like the tone is different. I don't feel like this guy has any solutions. Maybe the end is the solution.
That's what I'm wrestling with.
But I don't believe it. I don't believe that that's his solution after he just presented that worldview to us for 2.5 hours. And then at the last second, he says this all of a sudden. It didn't work. I didn't believe it. There's something insincere that I'm feeling from it. Like I said, the jokes and everything just got so much harsher and faster and repetitive and felt like he ran out of a movie pretty quickly. There's one review that I liked. The last line of it, I sent it to Derek, but the last line of it says this. It says, well, this is just his opinion. It says it's not smart enough to be a wake-up call or shocking enough to scare people straight, whatever. But in the early days of the century in which the world has become a farce of itself and comedians are the only people still afforded $75 million to make serious-minded original cinema, maybe all we can do with the time that remains is stare at our screens and lament how we got here. That's the movie that we watched.
Yeah.
Do you see the hypocrisy there? Like, I don't feel like this movie has weight. And I don't feel that last 5 minutes of that prayer gave that movie weight.
Do you feel like the movie's saying we're already at the point of hopeless no return and it's too late?
I feel like that's what he believes, but then he
tries to
put that
in at the end.
And then we talk about the flood. God promised that he would never do that again.
He wouldn't flood the earth again.
Yeah, he promised he would never do that again. So if they're talking about the end of the world, like the second coming, I don't know.
Let's get your thoughts, Joe.
So that's where I was going to lead into that. I think the ending, or however he wanted to present it, this is what I got from it, is that, again, the end is going to come. There is no what ifs or buts about it. So again, like kind of said in my intro, how are you going to be living through that? Are you going to be sucked into the system where you're trying to get your own selfish desires? Are you worshiping these idols and things like that are trying to fill your identity? Or are you going to go back to what is traditional, which is what the foundation of what Christ wanted, which is that family?
So
always comes back to family.
If the movie showed them in the face of that comment living that way, that would be a different movie. They show them with their tail between their legs as they're about to die. And they said, oh, God, help us. We had it all the whole time.
But isn't that a sense when we get to the end of ourselves, ultimately God is the only one we can go to.
You could look at it that way.
They end with gratitude though. Like genuine gratitude, don't they? Like that's the prayer. They did all that they could. They're grateful that they tried as best they can. And then they sit together and they spend the end of their world in communion and community together.
No, communion is the right word for it.
Yeah, communion together.
It is.
Wine together, they broke
Yes,
bread
it is a
together.
Last Supper moment. And also, on that regard, they're showing like the editing is showing all these different ways people are responding to that.
And everyone's
So-
living chaos and
Well,
it's-
isn't there like an
everyone.
orgy or something like that
there's-
taking place?
It's stuff like, but there is no, like, people are robbing stores. What are you going to need? The world's about to explode. You don't need a new TV. But again,
well, again, endings. We've talked about this before on the podcast. Endings reveal character. They reveal a truth, right? So I think what Nick's saying is that there wasn't enough in the film to
show
reveal
I get that,
those
yeah.
things about those characters to warrant that, right?
Until
So
the
maybe
end.
that's like the idea he's going for, but the execution didn't quite come through like with the screenplay itself.
Yeah.
That's like a writing thing.
That makes sense because the whole focus is on how bad society is. And so now we get back to these characters who we know nothing about. They're just screaming on TV.
yeah.
And then DiCaprio's character goes off, and I don't know. It didn't work for me.
Okay.
Okay.
I think what it shows with the family stuff is like the everyday life of a family. Sometimes, through everyday life, you're not really going to sit down with your family and eat. You're not going to really do these things because life is so busy. This is an astronomer, a family man who is now taken through all these different things because of his job. How many people can relate to that? They don't get to see their family all that often because they're going out to do these things for their job. Jennifer Lawrence's character, I don't even know if she has a family, but she ended up finding a family at the end.
No, remember she
she
tries
does.
to go back to her parents.
and she
shut,
does.
yeah,
And they
and she
shut
does,
her-
and they shun her away.
They shun her
No, they let her in.
No, they say we not going to talk about politics in this household.
Yeah.
but it's still
that's right.
It's still not a wholesome accepting of it. It's a we are putting a filter on what is going to be going on in this household. But
Well,
again, at the end, everyone was part of that family.
Yeah.
And again, think about this is our family. We have a family here at the podcast. We're not related by blood,
Right.
but through our situations and what has shaped us through our circumstances, we can sit at this dinner table at the end and be like, we did our best. We did what we could.
Yeah. Well, here's one of the best things I like about the screenplay is that DiCaprio and Lawrence are on the same playing field when they start. Essentially, I mean, yeah, he's a higher, obviously, and expertise.
She found
and
a
whatnot.
comment.
Yeah, exactly. But it puts him on a level playing field.
Yeah.
But then here's what's interesting. This is what I found interesting about the story is that it's a story about DiCaprio's character being accepted by the system, being accepted by what we might call the center of gravity and of power. And Jennifer Lawrence's character is pushed to the margins. She's pushed farther and farther out as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
And the margin accepts her. So like Timothy Chalamet's character,
That was such a
Paul.
weird pick.
yeah, Paul. So Paul and they represent like the margin, the outsider, right?
Yeah.
And they're the ones who accept her. And so it's interesting because the story that again McKay seems to be implying is that the center of power, big government, big media, big business, they will only accept you as long as you are beneficial in propping up their narrative, right? How you have to play a certain role, and as long as you play that role, that's what I think the whole affair with Cate Blanchett's character is really about. It's DiCaprio fully giving himself to that role.
Yeah.
But Lawrence's character is about moving farther and farther away from that unholy trinity, and when she gets to the end of that unholy trinity, she finds someone who is a self-professed, like quiet, but evangelical Christian, right? So I thought that was fascinating that she gets to the margins. And I do think that McKay would have been really easy for him to take a cheap shot because he takes a lot of cheap shots at the right in this movie. But it would have been easy for him to do that with the evangelical Christian guy, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
He instead has him on the margins to embrace the one who was no longer able to conform to the center.
He even says, I rebelled against my parents, but I ended up finding my own way to it.
Yeah, which I thought that was a cool line.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot. That's like all of us.
Yeah.
We all are going to rebel against things and find our way back in other ways.
I've got a performance that I didn't mention it earlier, I didn't think of it, but who was the actor for for Peter.
The little soft.
I also thought that was a great
It
performance
was fascinating because
it was very unnerving.
And it like he frustrated me to no end. But there was like
Mark,
I can't.
Rylance?
I don't know.
Never heard of this guy.
But man, I like that performance. He's pissing me off when he hears DiCaprio call him a businessman. He goes, "Businessman? Me?
What you think
That's what you think I'm a businessman?"
Oh,
and then he
that
goes,
guy.
Yeah. He has like we have 800 million data points on you or something like that, and he's like starts bringing up his polyps or whatever.
But that's people saying they know who you are based on like your political stance or things like that, based on what you believe.
No, there's literally like data collected on us.
It's
from
saying it based on how you interact.
This.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
But this isn't you.
But
This is not
But
you.
to them, it is.
Was his predictions not right in the movie?
That he's going to die alone?
No.
He didn't die alone.
No,
he died. He died.
So okay, good, man. All right. I give that to you.
He found his purpose. The true purpose was with his family, with people that cared about him, and he didn't realize it until the end, and he didn't die alone.
Right. So awesome. Here's the thing. So they're not fully right, but this is a real thing where our data is collected and sold, and they really can predict a lot of what we're gonna do, and that's how they send us certain things. Or they'll even like our Google searches, our Instagram algorithms, like everything is curated by. There's a system in that, and we are shown what they know we want to see.
Well, unless
it's so hard to find. Like even like I could type in blah, 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 onto Google, and you could do the same thing on your computer, Nick, and we would get different results. Tailored based on what we search and what we know. And this is a real thing, and this guy is saying these things. He's like saying, you look down on me, I own and I know all of these things.
Yeah.
And while, yes, he was wrong.
He was right about Meryl Streep, though. He's right about the president.
Because Meryl Streep, her spirit is in line with his system.
Yeah.
But he broke out of it.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
he broke
that's
out
good.
of that system.
Yeah.
And he was wrong.
He no longer could tell him who he was.
Yeah, because his spirit on the matter, he repented, he changed.
Crazy also how he has so much control of what the president can and can't do. He changed the entire mission that was going to destroy the comet so that he can get some money. But again, and presents it as, but this
we're
is
all
for the
gonna,
people. We're all
it's for the
gonna
people.
benefit from this and stuff like that. But no, we're gonna make the rich insanely richer.
And they acted this way because they had a plan B the whole time, except the sleeve, and just this whole placating of people, and just said, we'll give you everything you want, and just keep you sedated and all that. I thought it was interesting how they tried to weaponize the whole game against them at the end, and the whole don't look up campaign. And
that's when I'm with Nick. That's when the movie gets a little ridiculous for me. I'm like, all right.
I ain't gonna lie, it didn't get ridiculous. It was more like this is just a hyper visionized version of
It's exaggerated.
It's absurd. But like again, people
were
were wearing like ear coverings over their ear after Trump got shot. Like people will follow these individuals and then allow themselves to be molded by what the individuals are saying as well.
Yeah, I think
I don't think it's wrong or inaccurate what he's trying to depict, but the way he's doing it, it just felt maybe simple, maybe lazy. Like I just keep going back to American Psycho, and those two, it's sharper. It's like it's very, very observant, and I feel like this one is not as it's a little duller. It's a little blunted.
Yeah.
I think off the top of my head, American Psycho, it's honing in on an individual in his immediate circle to provide a commentary about society. This one is on society, about society. And the end with Bateman is a little more open-ended. The end with this one is, bam, everyone's dead.
Yeah.
It's like with the other one, there could be hope, there could not be hope. There's the action at the end is left open-ended. Here, the action is decided for you. There's none. It's done.
So American Psycho was honing in on something, and this was honing in on what?
Everything.
End of the world.
Well, this was a macro. It's a macro story.
Well, yeah.
American Psycho is a big story, but it's told very small. Just like what Jason said.
So
Don't Look Up, I think my criticism with the screenplay is that it does so much that it doesn't it can't possibly do
Try to
everything
get back.
it's trying to do and land that. Because even as I'm watching the movie, like, I'm like, this is great. I was laughing a lot. I was having a good time. I'm like, this movie will not land the plane. There is no way you can do all these topics.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, when we get to the look up, don't look, I'm like, there's too much. There's too much we're trying to do too quickly. Nothing has time to settle, to sit.
But I think
in
that
2.5 hours,
but I think that plays into the world though, because
I think that's true, too.
It's so much
Yeah,
being
it does.
thrown at you and thrown in
It
your
does.
face. It's just like, okay, these celebrities are saying this, but this celebrity is saying that. This political party is saying this, and it's moving by so quickly.
That's true.
But
That's
that's
a good
how
point.
information is just put off. It's just so quick, and you don't know how to really process it or what to really gain from it until after the fact when you're at a quiet place.
No, that's good, Joe. That is a good point.
I was just thinking, I think for me, I think that the real point and the real image of the movie is not the last scene, it's the end credit scene. He ends the movie on that prayer, and then that mid-credit or end credit scene when all the people get to the earth and then they all get destroyed by the animals.
Yeah.
I think that is the point of the movie.
And what do you think he's saying in that?
That he's just trying to make a movie that those people are at fault and they should be eaten. That may be that may be too blunt and black and white, but if I could just have more time to think it's pointed at that system and that structure, and the satire is tearing that down and then destroying it. And I don't think that end scene with the prayer is the honest solution for this director or for this movie, and I don't know. I can't say that for sure, but I think him going further and showing that last scene is the heart. I think.
Okay.
But that's the irony, though, is that this movie is made by a company and made by people that would be on that capsule if this happened in real life, right? So that's kind of what's ironic about this movie is I'm watching it and I'm like, yeah, but y'all would bounce.
Yeah,
like,
y'all
let's
would
be
bounce.
real. Y'all would
Y'all are
bounce.
on the ship.
Would they choose that prayer? Is that their end route that they would go?
That's what I'm struggling with,
And
though,
that's
right?
what
Is that I don't know if that's what they would do, but yet they're purporting that up that is there is something good, and that's why this movie is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. Anyways,
When I think of this movie and what it's criticizing, to me, it criticizes the government system and the relation with, public relations and celebrities, which are used to sway public opinion, and also big government, like you were saying. Those are the ones that are being criticized. And really, like, the people around the world are victims, whether they're doing whether they're doing good or bad. I don't know if it's saying everyone is bad, but the masses are easily like reactionary and manipulated.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is the few who make the decisions at the top are doing the manipulating, and at the end,
the entire world.
and no matter what everyone wanted, it only mattered at the head where power resided.
Yes.
Or where power was thought to. Really, like literally, they hold the nukes.
And again,
what can anyone do against this except for the people who hold the most actual explosive power?
Exactly.
yeah.
It came down to like literal caveman law.
And then
who
even
has the biggest stick?
Yeah.
They make the rules.
And then even again with that, we were at a place where we were actually going to work as a unit to destroy the thing. But again, like you said, Jason, one individual can change the entire measurement of the world's fate.
Yeah.
And that is a crazy concept because that is real.
That is.
A few group of people can decide the fate of everyone.
Yeah.
That's what happens with wars. It's because a few political leaders getting some type of heated debate or stuff like that. And now we are sending the boys and the men off to war. These political leaders aren't going to war.
Yeah.
We're sending off our countrymen to go to war.
Yeah.
So it's the innocents have to pay for these things that are decided.
Just like in
others.
Mr. Smith.
Just like in Mr. Smith.
The war on the innocents.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
so.
good. Let's go ahead and start to wrap this episode up. So kind of everyone wants to share their final thoughts on the movie. So the last thing I'll say is like the one moment that's where my suspension of disbelief was removed was that if this really happened, the media would be the way they're portrayed in this movie is like kind of like The View, where it's just very light all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the media in our
It's
world,
not even
would be-
accurate.
they would hammer this in. This would be everywhere, because the media is doom and gloom.
Yeah.
It always feels like it's the end of the world. Like the
Yeah.
way, even when they report a damn hurricane that's
That's true.
coming, it feels like an apocalyptic event.
But how did people react with the hurricane? Most people do hurricane parties. It's stuff like that. It doesn't.
Yes.
it's
COVID parties.
And COVID parties. You can throw out the most horrific news, but we're so desensitized by this stuff. We're throwing parties in the middle of this stuff.
But that's kind of one, I think I would have liked to see the movie do that. Is like, I don't think there was a moment where like the media was taking it seriously and the people weren't.
I think the media was taking it seriously when it was broadcasting certain events. I know the View, whatever the thing was the main viewcast that we were watching.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
there
yeah.
were other newscasts playing
that's
in
true.
the background, and they were addressing it.
That's true, yeah.
But again, we're not looking at those. We want to see the big time celebrities talk about these types of
Yep,
stuff.
that's
we want to
true.
see Tyler Perry on screen talk about, oh, look at my new Medea movie. Look at me. Because even Nancy was like, oh, is Tyler Perry going to do his Medea voice? I said, no, babe, he's supposed to be.
He's an actor.
Yeah, he
does other things.
He's doing his news report.
Yeah.
But again, people are looking for that type of stuff.
Yeah. And they're looking for their Ron Perlmans,
Mm-hmm.
which I
They
think is
are.
also my favorite performance in this movie. Him just yelling at the kids on the White House lawn.
Shooting it from the ground.
Shooting it from the ground.
That was fun.
Every moment he is in.
Shooting up at the comment, you're never taking it.
I actually really like Ron Perlman.
I do too. I think
And
I want to say
not
this
just in
was
this
great
movie, just in general, he's a great voice actor. He's freaking Hellboy.
He is.
He's the only
Optimus
Hellboy for
Primal.
me.
Mhm,
Yep,
he's
he
Optimus
was
Primal.
in Pinocchio. He was
Yeah.
Podesta.
Yeah, and I was very satisfied with this movie's use of him.
Yeah.
I want to do a shout out to the Indians.
There's-
All the different types of Indians.
Both of you.
Yeah.
Have you all ever considered teaming up?
Yup, that would be epic. I was like, what is this man? He's just from a different generation. But we also pass that stuff along too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just the age he grew up in.
Yeah.
No, that's racist.
All right. Any final thoughts, guys?
So I'll say this. The ending is the world versus Christ. Christ is with the people, caring for others, fellowshipping with others, while the world is loud and focused on what benefits man. So we kind of did touch on this. But again, I feel like the biggest takeaway for me is that ending dinner scene.
Yeah.
Because it starks contrast to how everybody else is reacting, and no one else is reacting in that way. Everyone is in midst chaos or just fearful or going into their earthly desires and indulgences. But I feel like the root of it, of true peace, is to bring out that environment where you could just be around others. Jesus fellowshiped with others. Jesus sat around a dinner table with sinners, and things like that. Each person at that dinner table, I won't say the kids and the mom, but some of them had their own faults.
Yeah.
But at the end, it doesn't matter because we're all human and we're all made in the image of Christ. So,
Yeah.
I feel like,
Amen.
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe, for bringing this movie on the
Yeah.
podcast. Thank you for sharing your heart again for family. It always comes back
It
to
always comes
family
back
and
to
community,
family,
right?
trauma.
And this is when the community's in disarray.
Yeah.
And so what do you do? So that's awesome. It's their blob.
Yeah, literally.
the
is.
comment is
It's
their blob.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which the government could have stopped.
All right, awesome, guys. Well, join us next week as we do another controversial film that hones in on a specific political issue. We'll do Nick's pick. And so thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, wait a minute. They charged us for snacks, which, by the way, that's a fantastic joke because every time she brings up that joke, it's her moving further and further away from that center and towards the margin. And the last time she says it, she's with Yul, a.k.a. Paul Atreides. And that's when she's officially at the margins. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you for listening to the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, produced by All Things Narrative. If you'd like to learn more about our coaching, workshops, events, please check out allthingsnarrative.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at All Things Narrative. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and tune in next time as we continue exploring the stories we love and the stories we live. Take care.